Motivation. Motivation is a fickle thing. As a non-physical concept, you would think there'd be an infinite amount of it. Despite this, it's always in limited supply. You can't touch it, you can't buy it, and you certainly can't force it into being. There's not a single person out there with an endless amount of motivation or drive. We all have our limits. This fact becomes rather troubling when you realize that everything you do requires some amount of it. Especially if it's something difficult and isn't a guaranteed success. The world doesn't owe you motivation, and it's certainly not going to just hand it to you. The people around you can help you find it, but they can be just as likely to take it away from you. As it turns out, a lot of people who aren't very motivated seem to take a lot of issue with people who are. Call it jealousy, envy, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that they see someone else succeeding and they just can't stand it. Not even succeeding, just trying. The mere fact that they're trying is just too much to handle. When I started YouTube, motivation for me came in a lot of different forms. Seeing my favorite content creators made me want to do something as fun and exciting as making a name for myself on the internet. Frustration with my part-time job made me want a career with more meaning. But above all else, the people around me that constantly pushed me were what gave me the most drive to succeed. I had a couple of friends who seriously believed in me. Friends who I knew I could count on to have my back if I ever needed it. I had my older brother who was kind enough to tell me he was my biggest fan, something that seemed silly at the time but has come to mean the world to me as an adult. I had my dad who told me every person needs to have a dream and to always keep that dream in mind, advice that I still cling to this day. But more than them, more than anyone else, I had the type of person who drove me the most. My naysayers, my detractors, not strangers on the internet, not faceless nobodies who I didn't know from anyone else. People I knew personally who wanted nothing more than to see me fail. I'd like to tell you a story about one particular person who fits this description. We'll call him Adam. Adam was not my friend, but he did hang around in my friends' circles. Some of my friends were friends with him, others didn't mind him enough to exclude him from our gatherings. Others, like myself, weren't particularly fond of him. This is largely because he was just extremely opinionated, to the point where liking things he didn't was just unacceptable. He could only tear things down, not build things up. He believed he was smarter than everyone, and that everything he said should be taken as gospel. For several reasons, including the ones I just mentioned, he and I didn't get along. We could be cordial, as long as we avoided certain topics, but one thing that was always a sticking point for him was my YouTube channel. He hated it. He didn't just hate the content, he hated its very existence. He actively told me that I was wasting everyone's time whenever I would push the upload button. He despised it so much that he actively pushed for me to not discuss it at any of our social gatherings. This is especially funny when you realize that I was in a seriously bad place back then, and the minor success of my channel was literally the only positive thing I had to talk about at the time. He genuinely would rather I be a social vampire who did nothing but mope than hear me be excited about my content. And I say this with no uncertainty, I wasn't a bragger. I wasn't because I couldn't be. To this day, I still can't accept any real praise for any accomplishments because I always feel like it isn't real or I didn't earn it. As it turns out, the reason for this was because Adam always wanted to do YouTube. He never actually went through with it, that would have involved effort, but he liked the idea of it. The fact that someone he didn't like was pursuing something that clearly belonged to him was just flat out unacceptable. His animosity was so great that he actively told people I was buying sub-bots. When I hit my 1,000 subscribers on my old channel, I was so excited that for the first time in ages, I walked onto campus with a smile on my face. I didn't say a single word, and he immediately greeted me by talking down to me, by telling me how I was nothing special and I shouldn't feel like I was. It's almost hard to believe that this happened because why would anyone do this? Why would anyone act this way? This isn't something people do, this is the sort of thing you hear about from evil stepmothers in Disney movies. And honestly, I'm sure it ran deeper than just envy or jealousy. I'm sure there was something deeper there, but at the end of the day, I was chasing a dream and he hated it. He hated that fact. What he didn't know was just how hard I would end up pushing myself at times solely out of spite for him. Every time he would push down, I would force myself back up just a little further. I thought very little of myself, and to this day that hasn't really changed much, but the fact that this man had the audacity to tell me I couldn't do something was sometimes all I needed to keep working. I wouldn't let him get the last laugh, I couldn't, but that type of motivation can only last for so long. Eventually, I never saw Adam again. Once I graduated, I had no reason to be anywhere near him. Frustration with my home life was a huge driving factor in why I worked so hard on my channel. Once I got married and my wife and I got an apartment, a lot of the resentment that fueled me began to strip away bit by bit. I hated my job and I fell into one that I loved, so the lack of money and hatred of the 9-to-5 grind went away as well. I went on medication for my depression, and as a result, I didn't need YouTube as an outlet for all my emotions anymore. In short, as my life got better, my motivations for YouTube began to vanish. But lately that's begun to change. Not because I stopped being happy, but because I miss it desperately. I think about YouTube now, and I constantly have that itch. That need to create has become all-consuming, and I know this motivation might not last forever. I made a mistake when I was at my lowest. I stopped taking this seriously, and I let that motivation slip away from me. It always seemed like a given that I would always be miserable, and would mindlessly chase something to get away from that fact. But now, the content I'm working on doesn't feel like something I have to do. It doesn't feel like some sort of out or an escape. It's something that I desperately want to do. It's become a dream again, one that I'm chasing now out of hope for the future, rather than anger at the present. So why am I sharing all of this? Why does any of this matter? Because I know that someone watching this feels like they want to do something they think that might change their life for the better. They have the motivation, they have the drive, but they just keep saying someday. My motivation came back to me, but that doesn't always happen. That's not the case for everyone. If you're watching this video and you keep thinking about going to the gym, turn this off and go do it. Right now. Go to your car, drive to the gym, start exercising. If you want to become a great artist, stop thinking about someday and start doing it. Don't be like me. Don't let your passion and your motivation slip away from you. I'm sorry that I did that I abandoned this channel and stopped working. But that time is over. I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. You'll be seeing regular uploads again for the foreseeable future. And to hold myself to that, I've already got a month's worth of content lined up and ready to go. I can't wait to see you all there when I upload it. Thank you.